Welcome back to Might Erase Later, where we're here for a good time, not a long time. So let's get into it. Last week, Netflix released Reality Check Inside America's Next Top Model. So, of course, Carrie and I watched, and of course, we are going to discuss. But let's back up a little bit because this show came out, Carrie, America's Next Top Model came out in 2002, and it was a massive hit at the time. And during the pandemic, it kind of found a new audience on streaming. And that's when people started to look at this show in 2025 lens and said, wow, this is super problematic. And so these documentarians said, hey, we're going to do this. They've done some serious documentaries, but the two people that are directors of this are actually married, and they got their starts on the Israel version of The Swan.
Right, no comment.
So, they kind of got to look at this documentary through a different lens of, hey, we know trash TV. We also know that it's 2025 and let's do this. So obviously there's years and years, right? There's 24 cycles of the show. There's lots of controversies, lots to discuss. But you watched it when it was on. What were your thoughts during that time?
I mean, I think like most girls during that time, I mean, we were already watching so many other shows and we had all the magazines and you were just supposed to be skinny.
Right.
Like there was the
Right.
hot skinny girl and that was the ideal beauty at the time. And so you have this show that comes along that further glamorizes modeling. And at the time, it was a good show. This is the time where even the producers themselves admitted that they were bringing modeling plus the real world and have that kind of behind the scenes but aspect. So yeah, I watched it.
Yeah. Right. I mean, you're going to put 10 girls in a New York apartment. You're going to have drama.
Right, because you have these girls that are coming, even the first season it shows you have girls that are coming from the Midwest, that are coming from conservative backgrounds, and then they're getting thrown into an apartment with girls that are from the city and, are from different backgrounds and are different sexual orientations. And that sort of drama that they highlighted in the show, and I think that was part of the controversy of you're throwing these women together to make drama, and then in reality, had they actually been models and been signed and were in the model apartment for elite modeling agency, this would have happened anyway. So I think that, while you can say, okay, it's forced because it's a television show, but it's based upon a real scenario of young girls coming to a city, trying to become models, and having to meet and mingle with people that are very different from them.
I agree. And I think especially the first couple of seasons was kind of Tyra's experiences. And Tyra Banks was the first Black model to be on the cover of Sports Illustrated. She ran the Victoria's Secret Angels show. I mean, she was a groundbreaking model. And the first couple of years of what they're kind of being asked to do, I feel like all of that was something that Tyra was asked to do. And, living in the house with each other and dealing with each other and all of that was her lived experience.
I think the documentary did a good job in the lead up, showing that however you feel about the way it ended at the beginning, it sounds like a noble pursuit. You have Tyra capitalizing on her fame and notoriety to say, okay, I have this idea, and it was a great idea. And then she proceeds to tap the J's, and
Yeah.
her co-hosts are out of the gate going to be very loud and proud queer representations. And then she's actively in that first cycle bringing in girls, because they are girls, they're very young, that are from different backgrounds and different ethnicities and different orientations. And so I think that there was a real intent there to try and make the modeling world better.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, because there was a part in the documentary where they talked about they had a Latina woman that they wanted to bring on in the first cycle, but the network said, no, 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 you already have one Black person on here. You can't have two, right? And they had to go out there and find another tall blonde to appease the network. So I think we should just get into it, right? There is a lot of controversies on the show. So a lot of them were talked about in the documentary.
Yes.
And we revisited those together. I think probably the hardest one to kind of tackle, we're going to do first, is the documentary really did show the sexual harassment and, I'm going to say possible assault with Shandy.
And I think this was, out of the gate first controversy that they discussed, where I could immediately see that teenage Carrie and grown-up Carrie see this situation very differently, because I don't remember it explicitly, but I know that I watched that episode when it first debuted, and I clearly did not think that I was watching a sexual assault, because it didn't upset me enough to make me not watch it again.
Right. And I think it's important to say that the way that it was shown on TV in 2003 was that Shandy had cheated on her boyfriend.
Exactly. That it was presented at that time as a narrative of this is cheating. But we could have watched this show today, and no matter how you would show it on television, even and making her go through this pantomime of apologizing and recording her destroying her life, basically, we wouldn't have fallen for that. We would be like, no, very clearly, why is she apologizing? She was assaulted. She did not consent. So that for me was very much a very obvious example of what we considered when we were younger to be. We went along with that instead of recognizing it very obviously today as non-consensual assault.
And the next one in cycle 4, Kenya Hill, she actually stopped the shoot to say that one of the male models was groping her, and she was chastised for stopping the shoot because how dare she waste their money and their time. And they say it on there, like, everyone here is a professional. How dare you? And then shockingly, her pictures aren't great because she's in an uncomfortable position. And the advice that Tyra and others gave was, oh, well, you should have just used your feminine wiles to push this guy off and create a boundary. And she's like, that's actually what I thought I was doing.
Again, it's one of those things that today we look at it and you see a young woman who says, I don't feel safe in this situation and I want it to stop. And she very politely stopped and said, this guy is groping me, and everyone assumed that she was being a diva and not looking at the dude who was standing right next to her, clearly just being lecherous.
Yeah. Like, everyone else was like, the other two male models were like close to her but weren't touching her. That one guy is just grabbing her hips and her butt the entire time.
Right. I mean, so for her, I did feel particularly bad because she wasn't believed, even though assault is happening right in front of everyone. She was the problem. And then again, with her way that being somehow as this is a problem.
Yes. And, that was kind of with her in particular because of those two things, and then we're going to talk about Janice Dickinson, because Janice was so mean to her. At the voting for that challenge. But also, I'm sitting there watching Tyra's response to this and even Janice Dickinson's response to this. And even in 2025, looking at this and or 2026 and saying, that was the exact thing there's no way that Tyra and Janice hadn't had some male model being creepy to them. And they gave the advice that had been given to them. And, the woman the director of the documentary said that was actually the same advice, that specific part was hard for her because that's the advice that she would have given at that time, but then said, but my daughter won't get that same advice. Like, we have learned over the last 20 years, but 20 years ago, that was absolutely what we would have said.
Because it's a part of this idea of, for these young women, just be pretty, just smile.
Right.
Don't be inconvenient. Like, it's inconvenient when you speak up about what you need, whether you need a bathroom break or you're hungry or you're thirsty or you need to sit down for a minute or you're cold or some guy is groping you. Like, anytime you speak up, like, you're going to be perceived as a problem and inconvenient and you won't get hired again.
Right. Which is interesting because I totally agree with you, but that's what I feel like that's what Tyra was trying to fight against with the whole concept of the show.
And then she winds up perpetuating.
Right.
Exactly. Which leads into Janice Dickens.
Janice. She was so awful. So, so awful.
It's like I kept saying while we were watching it, hurt people hurt people. Because here again, so we have a woman-run show. We have judges and supporting cast that were openly homosexual. And we're here to change the perception of beauty and give you a different viewpoint of modeling as an art. But yeah, we're going to consciously or unconsciously perpetuate all the terrible things that happen to us.
Yeah. And I found it interesting, and I can't find an answer for this, but why was Janice Dickinson even on this show? Like, clearly she and Tyra were not friends. I mean, they had these fights. Jay talked about it as one point. He just like went after Janice because he was trying to protect Tyra. Like, and I think that also kind of goes to when Tyra Banks was saying, I have bosses. It's like, well, yeah, because somebody decided to put Janice on the bench.
Which is just so terribly mean. And clearly, as is evidenced by her appearances later on various celebrity rehab shows, was not a healthy person, eating disorders, drug and alcohol addictions, all of that.
Bad plastic surgery. She was on botched.
It's shocking how mean she was and how we were okay with that. Like, we knew that she was mean at the time, but I wasn't appalled. Clearly, I kept watching it. So did everyone else. We weren't just like calling for her head. Like, you can't talk to young women like this. You can't talk to young black and brown women like this.
Right.
We were just like, oh yeah, that's crazy, Janice.
Right. Right. I mean, now she was mean for sport. Some of the other judges during challenges were actually trying to help some of the models, where Janice just wanted to tell you, you'll never be as famous as me.
Yeah, she would just show up at the end and judge you. I mean, it has to be said, the one white woman shows up at the end of the episode just to tell you that you're never going to be anything and you're disgusting. And we were like, yeah, it tracks.
Right. Okay. That's Janice Dickinson.
Right, that's
fine.
Janice Dickinson. It's totally fine. But again, yeah, terrible person. And it would be interesting to why is she there?
Right? I just couldn't figure that one out. And one of the people that she was, pretty hard on was Danielle and her smile. Danielle had a gap between her front two teeth, which I thought was really cute, truly. And it's very unique. And they basically told her that she had to have it surgically fixed to continue on the show, that she would be released at the next opportunity unless she went through this dental procedure.
And interesting, because two parts. One, they didn't close the gap, they just made it smaller. But then again, as they say later, then there was the white girl that was on a few cycles later, and they gave her a gap.
Yes. They widened her.
They widened her gap. And then you have Tyra saying, well, I was being told that no one would hire her with her teeth like that, which then leads to the complicated relationship that Tyra and Danny had after the show.
Mhm.
I think of Danny basically saying the show did nothing for her.
So Danny had a very successful modeling career after this. Um, and I think all the girls have said, or at least most of the girls have said something to the effect of reality television kind of hindered me at times. But, and that may very well be true, but this is also pre social media the way that we see it now. I mean, the only way that these girls were getting discovered was by the big casting calls in New York or around the country or by doing this. And while I do think that some doors were closed because she was a reality star at that point, I think a lot of doors were opened and people were like, oh, she exists. And I just find it really hard if somebody has a very successful career to say, well, my first job didn't help me at all. Or my first job was, it was, my career was in spite of my first job. And I just, no, that's just not true.
I don't buy that at all because, like you said, this was a time period the models didn't have all the self-promotion tools that they have now. So, and it was known that we were joking about it being the scholarship competition. This show was an opportunity for women to appear on the show, and they would be given the opportunity to become successful. So with Danny, she got the contract, she got in the door, and then she wound up being a very good model. And then from there had a great career based on her own merit and work.
Right.
But to then say turn around and say the show didn't do anything for me, again, that's too far.
Yeah, agree. So some of the other big controversies, the show not once but twice had a race swapping episode. And even in 2005, when they did the first cycle of this, I think we all knew that blackface was wrong.
I definitely knew blackface was wrong in 2005. I knew growing up in the South, in elementary school, I knew that blackface was wrong.
I learned it from an episode of Gimme a Break when little Matthew Lawrence did it and Nell Carter had to tell him why that was wrong. But that was still the 80s.
Right. And
2005 was a little bit late for them to still be doing that.
Right. And we recognize that Tyra was doing that because, as she said, she was trying to show that all skin tones are beautiful and great, but then she never sat with herself through the second part of that in the execution of trying to show America that other skin tones are also beautiful. That was misguided. To say lightly.
Yes. And what kills me is they did this episode, and I assume even in 2005 they got some pushback about it, and then they did it 2 years later. They did another race swapping episode.
Like the ratings were there, and it's like, yeah, but not for the reason you think.
Yeah, so that one, I agree. I see where Tyra was coming from, but completely and utterly missed the mark, even in 2005. That should never have been a thing. What did you think of Ken Mock, the director? Now, Ken had
I was about to say, he's the guy that he had prior experience with making the band.
Yes.
With P. Diddy.
Yep.
So we're automatically getting back into like an ick factor of a man who has been around a circle of people in Hollywood, in entertainment, where there's already a very high tolerance for treating young women badly.
Yes.
And so if you're looking for an adult in the room when a girl is getting drunk and being assaulted, it's not going to be Ken stepping in and saying, we shouldn't be doing this, or we should change some of these challenges. If anything, he's the one that's pushing it to go further,
Yeah.
pushing the challenges to go more extreme. Even though I did want to say, like, going back even to Shandy, the mental gymnastics that it took for him to say almost within the same 5 minutes of, well, we didn't intervene with Shandy because we were making a documentary.
Yep.
And then the very next season cycle, they start doing these game show type challenges. So it's like, no, you were always a show. This was always a game. This was always a setup. You can't call it a documentary. And one breath, and have girls running through the mud the next and say that you're still making a documentary. We've seen all over social media and since the documentary came out of Tyra's non-apology, and we can talk about that in a minute, but Ken did apologize for one, not the rest.
No. He only apologized for when the models played dead.
Yeah,
violent deaths.
And had the girl whose mother had been shot
Yes.
portray a gunshot victim. I mean, he was like, yeah, it was bad. It's like, well, that's the bar, Ken. That's the bar.
So one of the biggest, or at least culturally significant parts of this show that is still culturally a big deal is we were rooting for you, Tiffany. And what I don't, whether I knew and just don't remember, the documentary pointed out she was actually on the season before, and she was kicked off of that season because she got into a bar fight.
Right. It was like, I think it was a couple seasons before. Yeah, her whole storyline, it makes me uncomfortable to even talk about it because you just get this sense that her and Tyra did have a deep relationship.
Yeah.
That Tyra became, for whatever reason, very close with this young woman. And they did have a complicated relationship to the point where when Tiffany does stumble and they decide to boot her off the show, that this is where you get that moment of Tyra having this outburst, this almost violent and compared to her usual. But yeah, it's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable to even think about because we know we don't know the entire story of what happened there. And because we don't, it's hard to hold anyone to blame. But even now, like, I feel two ways of like, Tiffany, why can't you get over it? Why are you still mad at her?
She's still so angry.
Yeah, she's still very angry at her. And you're like, oh, why? But then you're like, I don't know. It was never right at the time.
No, it wasn't. I agree. At the time, right, you can't do that. And then I know that the producers, Ken and Tyra, have said that they didn't put everything on TV. So much more happened.
Yeah.
And some of the girls were saying some of these kind of final days were 8 hours of filming and it's 15 minutes of TV. I mean, there's a lot that happened behind the scenes. But I will say this was 20 years ago and Tiffany is still so angry. Look, therapy is great for a lot of people for a lot of things.
Right.
And the fact that Tiffany had to go to anger management classes 20 years ago to even be on the show, maybe she should take a refresher. Because no, it was not right. And Tyra definitely went too far. And we can talk about her response to that. But, girl, you can't be this angry.
I don't know. Like I said, again, I hate to even pass judgment on it. Tyra admits that she took it too far, that she was too angry. The whole situation just makes me uncomfortable.
Yeah. Maybe, but at the same time, if you have Tyra Banks trying to be your friend, calling you every month or so to be like, hey, let's check in, let's talk about this. I don't think it's fair to be like, well, she was just appeasing her own guilt.
Right, right. I mean, there was the idea that she did say that she's reaching out to me and it doesn't feel genuine, it feels fake. But again, why is Tyra reaching out so much? That's where I go back to of like, there is something there that we don't understand of why Tyra, and she even said, I'm drawn to this girl. And you're like, okay, ladies, y'all are just going to need to work it out because this is odd.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right, because I mean, Tyra did say, right, the moment was bigger than just Tiffany. You know, she took a lot out on Tiffany that was not directly for her.
Yeah.
Right. It was this, 20 years of her own, of Tyra's own insecurities and own baggage that she somehow put on Tiffany. But after that, which was a terrible outburst, that's when Jay said, I gotta go. It's gonna be time. And Jay evidently told Tyra, I wanna go. I've loved this experience, but like, it's time. And Tyra sent back an email that said, I am disappointed. And supposedly after that, the two of them never spoke off camera again.
Yeah.
And I'm not gonna lie, I'm gonna say that's on Jay.
It does seem so. If you say in one side, Tyra's my best friend, we spent all this time together, and we always had a pact that we would talk to each other first before we did anything. And then you say, so I emailed her first. If I had a beef with you, Jen, and I didn't want to say it to your face, I would not email you. But wasn't Tyra at his house all the time? Like, it just didn't make any sense of if you guys are so close and then you break this big news to her over email, then I think she has a right to feel miffed and feel betrayed. And you didn't necessarily really want to talk about it.
Right,
You had already made up your mind.
And he says that there was no follow-up. He said he went to work the next day and she was cold to him, and so he just ignored her. And then the season was over. They go off for 3 months without speaking at all. He comes back, like they've renegotiated. He decided, okay, I'll stay for another cycle. But he was negotiating with the network, not with Tyra. And he comes back and he was like, I just kept expecting her to come to me
No, I mean,
and
you
make
wrote
it all better.
No, you wrote an email, and from the sounds of it, your email, you laid out your supporting facts and your conclusion, and not seeming to leave any room for discussion there with your best girlfriend.
Right. I mean, they talked about how they wouldn't stay in hotels. They would just stay with each other.
I would feel a little betrayed if that was, again, I had a working relationship with a very close friend and they emailed me, and then in an email that basically was, and this is what I'm going to do. That doesn't seem to be leaving a lot of room to have a discussion with your friend of what you might need that could be accommodated in
Or
order to
just
stay
be
on the
like,
show.
hey, I gotta go, but I'm gonna tell you to your face. I'm gonna tell you why. We're gonna have it over, we're gonna do this over wine. Like, I'm leaving, but
And then he writes all these books, or
right?
at least the one book, what was it called? The
Wig, the bitch, and the meltdown.
Right. Which clearly Tyra still loves him for not suing him in some capacity about that. Because even she said on the show, I'm not going to talk about Jay. If I want to talk to Jay, I'll talk to Jay, which I thought was very respectful of their, again, I'm not finding her 100% in the fault here. Even to this day, she's, whatever I need to say to Jay, him and I'll discuss it together because there's obviously still care and feelings there.
After that, Jay stays, but they don't have a personal relationship. And then he, Miss J, and Nigel all get fired. All their contracts are up like 2 years later. None of them are renewed. Evidently, they had kind of had a conversation with the network about a press release about how they're all going their separate ways. And somehow page 6 was told that the 3 of them were fired.
Yeah, I mean, this gives very Queer Eye vibes,
Yes.
where you have members of the Queer Eye cast that are trying to leave with grace, and then something is leaked to the
Yeah.
press of, well, here's what actually happened. I'm thinking of like Bobby Burke and other recent members of that cast, which have had quite, despite best of intentions, had dirty falling out. And yeah, this leaked to Page Six.
I don't think it was Tyra. She addressed in the documentary, she said it was not her decision to release the three of them. And I don't think she leaked it. I have no doubt that it was leaked by the network or Ken, right? Because I think that there was also, by getting rid of them, it was ratings were down. The network wanted to kind of revamp the whole thing. And I think they needed to control that narrative. I think the network needed that they fired these three and they were bringing in fresh talent and they were revamping the show. I think they needed that press.
But I think also perhaps by that point, Tyra really was becoming more difficult to work with because they so readily believed that she was the one that leaked it. And when they were appearing on television news shows being interviewed, and you have Miss J rolling her eyes so hard. How was it working with Tyra? And she's just like, well, like no one's really willing to talk, but you can just tell by her facial expression of like, yeah, no, she was not yet. So that's where I think she was probably already becoming a person that was really not easy to work with. And so it was perfectly believable that she could have had this betrayal on the way out.
Right.
And then after those three are gone and the show just becomes completely unhinged and jumps the shark.
Yeah. And then she got fired. I mean, let's not forget that Tyra got fired from her own show. She may have been an executive producer and she may have still gotten paid for those last two cycles. But the network said, no, you're not hosting this anymore.
So that was the documentary. But there were some other things that have floated around on social media and come out in the wake of the show. And so what were some of those things?
So some of those were the first trans model, Isis King, was on there. And they said that the controversy was that other girls, while the judges were nice to her and respectful of everything, that some of the other girls were not. And while, yes, that's true, I think to your earlier point of it's very realistic that these women all live in an apartment themselves together as models. And if you are the first trans, let's be honest, none of these little Midwestern girls have ever met a trans woman before. They're going to be mean to you. And I will say, I did find some quotes from Isis King, and she had nothing but good things to say about her experience. Like, she was not talking about any of the mean girls at the house. But that was brought up in other social media posts of like, oh God, these girls were so mean to her.
So I think talking about Isis and the reaction that some of the girls in the apartment had to her, it's also very reminiscent of how Ebony was treated in the first cycle, where another woman who is saying that the fact that Ebony is a lesbian and her girlfriend is going to be here makes me very uncomfortable because I don't support homosexuality. And then you have, you're heartbreaking for Ebony when we're looking at her now being like, my God, she's gorgeous. Her skin is gorgeous. And then looking at how at the time you have even Tyra saying you're ashy. Other girls are saying like, can you wash your hands because you're leaving grease all around the apartment from all of the lotion. Like, that stuff was really hurtful to watch because we would never, again, it would never occur to us to say that or do that nowadays. But again, looking back, we watched that show and didn't blink. You're looking at a woman in pain. You're showing Ebony with her girlfriend and they're having a normal, loving relationship moment. And at the same time, you have girls making fun of her skin. But we just blew right past that.
Yeah, we did. In 2002, we didn't even bat an eye.
No. So of all the good that is on that show, so far as
Right.
like showing people modeling as an art form, showing true diversity.
Right. And let's not forget that Nigel came in season 2 and they specifically had to hire a straight white man that was attractive because they didn't have that yet on the show.
And it worked.
It worked. Nigel was perfect.
And then Jada,
Yes.
who is a Black woman and is in a scene where she's being photographed kissing another male model after the male model has made it known that he does not like Black girls.
Yes.
And again, it's on her to not be inconvenient. It's on her
Right.
not to make it awkward. It's on her to suck it up and pretend that this is a romantic moment that can be captured on film. Again, it's back on these girls of just be quiet,
Right.
suck it up, this is okay.
Right.
Rather than like, well, this guy should have been decked in the mouth.
Right.
He should have been taken off set. That's
Yeah.
totally inappropriate. Like if a girl has to bend over backwards in order to be a model, and you're a male model, and you can just be as gross as you want to be.
Yeah.
You can grope the girls. You can talk about their bodies. You can say racist, horrible shit, and it's okay because you're the male model.
Right. And I think this kind of goes in, and I don't remember that cycle with Jada,
Yeah, I don't think I watched it by then.
but Jay did talk in the documentary about if they wanted to make sure that a girl stayed on the show and would win the challenges, that's when Jay would kind of be deployed and help them through that challenge to make sure that they did really well in it. Because basically the judges were going to keep them no matter what, so they had to kind of justify why they were keeping them. If they had like a good off, different storyline going. And so my guess is also for her, they didn't like her enough. And so there wasn't somebody kind of talking her through that moment. Because I am sure that in real life modeling, you have to do something you're not completely comfortable with. Hence why there's somebody there to kind of help you through it and be your buddy and,
Yeah.
talk you through it and be there to support you. It's not just you on an island just getting told what to do. And she just didn't have that. She had zero support from the show and from the team.
So, Jen, we watched all the episodes back to back to back. And it was easy to do so. I think it was overall like well edited.
Yeah.
They covered what they needed to cover. What are your takeaways?
So, honestly, my takeaways are that the girls are all brats, that nobody on the documentary was thankful for Tyra. Now, I have read other interviews from previous cycles and previous things where some girls are thankful for the opportunities. And I think the biggest thing that America's Next Top Model did wrong was they sold these girls on a dream that was never realistic. So, give you a few numbers for you, Carrie. 4% of all models actually work full time. The average salary is under $60,000 a year, and your career is like 5 years or less. But the models that you and I can name are the top 0.1% of all models and all people that want to be models.
Right.
And I think what they did wrong is they sold this dream of you can be Tyra Banks. And then they said, oh, here's your JCPenney catalog.
I agree on that point where the girls that had really harsh things to say about how Tyra didn't help their career, aside from anything about Tyra as a person, but that this was somehow a sham and a fraud, ignores the reality that the modeling industry is hard. It's not reality. It does involve body shaming, like not just everyone is going, just because you're a beautiful person doesn't mean that you're going to be a model. And I think that that is something that they didn't highlight enough in the documentary of where everyone is now, and what they could have done a better job of at the time was telling these girls of, you might not be a model, you might not be the top model, but you're going to be beautiful no matter what. Like, you are a beautiful person, and these two things are not exclusive categories. That just because you never become a model, just because you don't win these silly little shows, doesn't mean that you aren't stunning and that you aren't beautiful, and that even with all the work that Tyra is trying to do to expand the definition of beauty within modeling, that this isn't it. This isn't the only thing. And again, if you're not becoming a model, it doesn't matter. It ultimately, none of this matters, because again,
Right.
hardly no one is going to ever become famous this way.
Right.
And if you do, you might wind up a broken human being like Janice Dickinson to get there.
Right.
Like, the things that you're going to have to do to get there are probably not healthy for you or your body.
And I think some of and like reading different interviews with some of the contestants, some of them are still, not quite as mad as Tiffany, but some of them, like Danny, that are still angry about the industry. And I think what came across in the documentary was the women that hate the industry, that are mad at all of the things you just said, somehow it kind of came across as that's Tyra's fault.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I got mad at the girls of, no, it's not. It's not Tyra Banks' fault for all of this. And it's not her fault that you couldn't get a job modeling after this. Whether there was the stigma of America's Next Top Model, whether you were just so down on yourself because the show just tore you to pieces. Whatever that was.
Or you didn't have the look for that season.
Right.
Like, whatever it was. So, final question. Do you think Tyra Banks apologized enough?
Did she apologize at all?
I think she did granted, she did a great job at some non-apologies of just acknowledging, like, yeah, that wasn't great. Mm-hmm. We do better now. Obviously, I would handle that situation differently now.
I was fine with her. I think that I took away all of her little non-apologies, all of her things, was her saying, in the moments that we were in, I did the best that I could, and I thought I was at every step, I thought I was doing the right thing. Mm-hmm. And I don't necessarily think you have to apologize for that.
Yeah.
That she can now reflect on 25 years ago, this was what she did, but she's not apologizing for it. She said that with Tiffany, she went a step too far.
Yes.
And she said that she and Jay would talk separately. And listen, she was very polished. She has had media training. She knew how to answer those questions. Mm-hmm. But I don't think she was unsympathetic.
No. I think she did good. All things considering, this was not her documentary.
No. And she had no creative control over this documentary.
So it was a rough time for women generally in the 2000s. It was like, we thought we were feminist, and yet there's all this going on where we're still victims of how we've been raised and what we've gone through. And now we've had therapy, and we can look back on that time and be kind to our younger selves. Mm-hmm. And so I think if you and I can look back at our 15, 16-year-old selves and forgive ourselves for the way we treated our body and the negative self-talk that we have experienced at this point for most of our life, then I think we can forgive Tyra for not falling on her sword in public and bloodletting as somehow to make amends to all these women that were subjected to her awful show. That's too far. Yeah. That's too far. Again, I think her intentions were, at least from the start, good. And like you said, she thought she was doing the best she could by the contestants. And of course, towards the end of the show, it got off. It was just,
Yeah.
yeah, we don't need
It became way too much for-profit television.
Right. It was clearly a shtick.
Yeah.
But no, I don't. I think she, if you want to call it an apology or non-apology, I think she did well. So do you think there's going to be another cycle? Was she teasing that for herself, or she's just waiting to see what the reception is for this documentary of whether or not she can revive the show?
I mean, let's be honest, we would all watch if there was a cycle 25. The way that she said it, I took it as cycle 25 was the Tyra Banks' next chapter, not America's Next Top Model. But I would absolutely watch another one if there was one. Except for the hot ice cream. That's weird.
Oh no, God. Is this going to get a part 2? We didn't even talk about SMiZE Ice Cream. You guys.
How did we not even say the word SMiZE after all of this?
I know, we've talked for nearly an hour and we haven't even gotten to the hot ice cream. Jenn.
Carrie.
All right, well, guys, stay tuned. Maybe we have to do a part 2 to Tyra just to talk about warm ice cream.
Hot ice cream.
AKA a milkshake.
Custard based.